Mr. Irving's acquaintance at Montreal, many years since, with some of the principal partners of the Great Northwest Fur Company, was the means of interesting him deeply in the varied concerns of trappers, hunters, and Indians. And in all the adventurous details connected with the commerce in peltries. Not long after his return from his late tour to the prairies, he held a conversation with his friend, Mr. John Jacob Astor of New York, in relation to an enterprise set on foot and conducted by that gentleman about the year 1812. An enterprise having for its object a participation on the most extensive scale in the fur trade carried on with the Indians in all the western and northwestern regions of North America. Finding Mr. I fully alive to the exciting interest of the subject, Mr. Astor was induced to express a regret in the true nature and extent of the enterprise, together with its great national character and importance, had never been fully generally comprehended, and with a wish that Mr. Irving would undertake to give an account of it. To this he consented. All the papers relative to the matter were submitted to his inspection, and the volumes now before us, 2 well-sized octavos, are the result. The work has been accomplished in a masterly manner, the modesty of the title affording no indication of the fullness, the comprehensiveness, and beauty with which a long and entangled series of details, collected necessarily from a mass of vague and imperfect data, has been wrought into completeness and unity. Supposing our readers acquainted with the main features of the original fur trade in America, we shall not follow Mr. Irving in his vivid account of the primitive French-Canadian merchant, his jovial establishment and dependence of the licensed traders, missionaries, voyagers, and coureurs de bois, of the British-Canadian fur merchant, of the rise of the great company of the Northwest, its institution and internal trade, its parliamentary hall and banqueting room, its boating, hunting, its wassailings, and other magnificent feudal doings in the wilderness. It was the British Mackinaw Company, we presume, a company established in rivalry of the Northwest, the scene of whose main operations first aroused the attention of our government. Its chief factory was established at Michilimackinac and set forth its pirogues by Green Bay, Fox River, and the Wisconsin, to the Mississippi, thence to all its tributary streams, in this way hoping to monopolize the trade with all the Indian tribes on the southern and western waters of our own territory, as the Northwest had monopolized it along the waters of the North. Of course, we now began to view a jealous eye and to make excursions for counteracting the influence hourly acquired over our own aborigines by these immense combinations of foreigners. In 1796, the United States sent out agents to establish rival trade trading houses on the frontier, and thus by supplying the wants of the Indians to link their interests with ours and to divert the trade, if possible, into national channels. The enterprise failed, being, we suppose, inefficiently conducted and supported, and the design was never afterward attempted until by the individual means of energy of Mr. Astor. John Jacob Astor was born in Waldorf, a German village near Heidelberg, on the banks of the Rhine. While yet a youth, he foresaw that he would arrive at great wealth, and leaving home, took his way alone to London, where he found himself at the close of the American Revolution. An elder brother, being in the United States, he followed him there. In January 1784, he arrived at the Hampton Roads with some little merchandise suited to the American market. On the passage, he had become acquainted with a countryman of his, a furrier, from whom he derives much information in regard to the fur, and the matter conducting the trade. Subsequently, he accompanied this gentleman to New York, and by his advice, invested the proceeds of his merchandise in peltries. With these he sailed to London, and having disposed of his adventure advantageously, he returned to the same year, 1784, to New York, with the view of settling in the United States and prosecuting the business thus commenced. Mr. Astor's beginnings in this way were necessarily small, but his perseverance was indomitable, his integrity unimpeachable, and his economy of the most rigid kind. To these, says Mr. Irving, were added an aspiring spirit that always looked upward, a genius bold, fertile, and expansive, a sagacity quick to grasp and convert every circumstance to his advantage, and a singular and never wavering confidence of signal success. These opinions are more than re-echoed by the whole crowd of Mr. Astor's numerous acquaintances and friends, and are the most strongly insisted upon by those who have the pleasure of knowing him best. In the United States, the fur trade was not yet sufficiently organized to form a regular line of business. Mr. A made annual visits to Montreal for the purpose of buying peltries, and as no direct trade was permitted from Canada to any country but England, he shipped them, when bought, immediately to London. This difficulty being removed, however, by the Treaty of 1795, he made a contract for furs with the Northwest Company, and imported them from Montreal into the United States, thence shipping a portion to different parts of Europe, as well as to the principal market in China. By the treaty just spoken of, the British possessions on our sides of the lakes were given up, and an opening made for the American fur trader on the confines of Canada and within the territories of the United States. Here Mr. Astor, about the year 1807, adventured largely on his own account, increasing capital now placing him among the chief of American merchants. The influence of the Mackinaw Company, however, proved too much for him, and he was induced to consider the means of entering into successful competition. He was aware of the wish of the government to concentrate the fur trades with its boundaries in the hands of its own citizens. And he now offered, if national trade aid or protection should be afforded, to, quote-unquote, turn the whole of the trade into American channels, He was invited to unfold his plans, and they were warmly approved, but we believe little more. The countenance of the government was, nevertheless, of much importance, and in 1809 he procured from the legislature of New York a charter incorporating a company under the name of the American Fur Company, and with a capital of $1 million, and the privilege of increasing it to $2 million. He himself constituted the company and furnished the capital. The board of directors were merely nominal, and the whole business was conducted with his own resources and according to his own will. We here pass over Mr. Irving's lucid, although brief, account of the fur trade in the Pacific, of Russian and American enterprises on the northwestern coast, and of the discovery by Captain Gray in 1792 of the mouth of the river Columbia. He proceeds to speak of Captain Jonathan Carver of the British Columbia Provincial Army. In 1763, shortly after the acquisition of the Canadas by Great Britain, this gentleman projected a journey across the continent between the 43rd and the 46th degrees of northern latitude to the shores of the 43rd and the 46th degrees. To the shores of the Pacific. His objects were, quote-unquote, to ascertain the breadth of the continent at its broadest part, and to determine on some part of the shores of the Pacific where government might establish a post to facilitate the discovery of the Northwestern Passage, or communication between Hudson's Bay and the Pacific Ocean. He failed twice in individual attempts to accompany this journey, to accomplish this journey. In 1774, Richard Whitworth, a member of Parliament, came into the scheme of Captain Carver's. These two gentlemen determined to take with them 50 or 60 men, artificers or mariners, to proceed up one of the branches of the Missouri, find the source of the Oregon, the Columbia, and sail down the river to its mouth. Here a fort was to be erected.